And we are back with the Hill's live election night coverage. I'm Robby Soave, host of Rising, and we're looking at some interesting events taking place. I was most struck, Nomiki, by a voter telling MSNBC, this is in Arizona, young male, that Kamala Harris lost his vote by not appearing on the Joe Rogan podcast, something we widely predicted was going to be a mistake, not for her to do that and not to, tap into that enormous contrarian, out there, alternative media ecosystem that he's created. But of course, then there's also a voter that you pointed out, found also by CNN in North Carolina, who is going to vote for Kamala Harris because of why?
Because if he didn't, his girlfriend was going to break up with him. But I don't buy.
Two sides of America, ladies and
I
gentlemen.
do not buy this Arizona voter. I know those Arizona voters. Some are in my family. I don't think Joe Rogan was going to determine the election. I think Joe Rogan wants people to think that.
I think Joe Rogan has a big impact on the election.
I mean, maybe if they stayed out
as much as anything
could turn out, but I don't think any of those voters were really on the fence thinking, they weren't the undecided voters. That small crew of undecided voters that was left was mostly female at this point, and we do know that. So this guy may have said that. He also might be saying it because he knows it's going to get
you can
go
say
viral.
that, but I don't know. I could see it very much being the case that that would have been a good opportunity for her to reach people who don't tune into normal politics, don't see what she's saying in other contexts, but who knows? Andrew Yang also weighing in and saying that he thinks it was a big mistake for her to not go on Joe Rogan. He is someone who obviously came to attention and popularity in large part by doing alternative media and podcast appearances. He was on Rising numerous times, which is good. Let's turn to the actual results we have so far. We have Tim Kaine defeating Hung Kao in Virginia, which was expected, but it was a little close in Virginia. Elsewhere, it's looking so far better than I think a lot of people anticipated for Trump. I'm seeing the Loudoun County results in particular are worrying Democrats in that the total for Kamala Harris, the percentage, is lower so far than Joe Biden got. This is a state that elected Glenn Youngkin out of frustration with a lot of Democratic COVID policies, I think in particular, some school stuff, that kind of thing.
North Carolina's looking very good for Kamala Harris in some parts of North Carolina that they did not think. It's still a toss-up. Actually, the results were just updated. So it's very much a toss-up right now, according to the New York Times. It's still very early. And a lot of these states that are coming through are rural states. That's what happens every cycle. I always have to remind folks, the first states to come in, especially in the East, are rural states that are red states. It takes a lot longer to count big cities, which lean more Democratic. I think Florida is going to be interesting for us to analyze in that it's not necessarily, she's underperforming Joe Biden, which, again, an anomaly year, COVID year, a lot of mail-in votes. But I've been talking to a source in Miami who's very involved in politics and organizing there, and they're concerned that the demos that they thought were going to turn out are not the ones that the media is stating, and that they lost this abortion referendum on the 6-week abortion.
This is just a solidly red state now.
Recreational marijuana.
Which I'm disappointed about. I would like to, as a libertarian, I would like to have recreational marijuana. So that one is a disappointment to me. But
it's not solidly. It's 50. It's more or less 49 to 51, and in off years,
look at Miami-Dade.
More Democratic.
Miami-Dade.
That's really what it comes down to.
70%
that's what it comes down
Hispanic county, and
mostly Cuban.
And you have a massive, this state has been moved from a swing state over the course of our lifetimes into a solidly red state, and the Hispanics voting for Trump, voting for DeSantis.
Cubans, but this is why you have to understand the complexity of Hispanic voters. Those Cuban voters have always been conservative. This is not a new thing. These are folks who fled Fidel Castro, who are afraid of communism and socialism. That is how it's been leaning, really for the last 25, 30 years, since Cubans arrived. But Miami, I mean, it's not solidly red. He won Miami-Dade by 55, and she's at 44, and not even all the count is in right now. This is a state.
Yeah, it's a city.
but that's one. Broward County, just north, she won by 58% to 41. Orlando, a solidly Puerto Rican.
It's notable when a city
56.
goes even somewhat solidly Republican is a notable thing, a major city.
There's plenty of states that have major cities that are conservative. I mean, Texas is a great example. I mean, you look at the west coast of Florida, you have Tampa, that's solidly Republican, but then you have other places like Tallahassee that's 60% Democratic. It's an interesting state, and I think it's really going to come down to micro communities in that Miami-Dade area. I don't think it's about Cubans. They've never voted, for the most part, Democratic, except for Anna Navarro and her husband, who's the former chair of the
I mean, it's
Republican
done,
Party.
right? It's been called now for Trump, so
It is.
Your prediction is out the window. I will not have to wear
That's okay.
my White Dudes for Harris T-shirt on the show tomorrow. I was confident enough that I was not gonna have to do it. So far, the vibes I'm hearing from Trump people is that they're reasonably pleased. But of course, last election, we had the same situation where a lot of the early returns were favorable to Trump, and then they watched that lead evaporate as it went later and later into the night, as you get, counting mail-in ballots from other places, that kind of thing. Then that it evens out, and that was the frustration watching that happen. We could be in for an exact repeat of that, but I know that many Republican commentators are feeling happy right now. The New York Times election dial is up and running, and right now it's pointed like, oop, this way, a little bit in Trump's favor.
It's going to go back. I mean, again, we're seeing these early states are generally more conservative states.
Yeah.
There's no big shockers here. I mean, I'm looking at North Carolina. That's the one I really am watching. Virginia, I think that has been surprising because last time Democrats won Virginia was with Barack Obama, and since then it's been off the table. So
yeah,
we have some shifts. If there's anything that's coming out of this, it's that we're going to have a better understanding of the demographics of our country in presidential cycles, which we really haven't had a good grasp of since 2016.
Yeah.
And the country has shifted drastically. Millennials are now eking into their 40s. Gen Zers are, the gender divide with Gen Z is drastic. It's huge. It's bigger than any other generation in history. And you're seeing a realignment with how both parties deal with working class issues, with culture issues. It's not our traditional drawing lines. And I think that this and how the generations interact with media too.
I mean, we're going to see what I expect is both camps doing better with certain kinds of voters. Already seeing evidence of Kamala Harris doing well with older voters or older white voters. Trump obviously had nowhere to go but up with minority voters, but getting people in that category, particularly male, is going to help him in those Sun Belt states. It's going to help him in Arizona, Nevada, et cetera. I still think Nevada is very much in play for the Trump campaign.
I don't disagree with you, and that's why I didn't have it on my map as a solid vote, just a reminder.
All right, we'll be back with more Hill coverage of election night. Stay tuned.